Why did Immanuel Kant think the ontological proof for God's existence failed? If you've ever wondered about the famous ontological argument for God's existence, you might have heard that Immanuel Kant, one of the most influential philosophers, had some strong objections. But why did he think this proof fell short? Let's unravel this complex issue together. The ontological argument sounds complicated, right? Well, it's basically an argument that says God's existence can be proven just through the definition of God itself. Sounds pretty neat in theory. But the question is, can we really prove God's existence just by defining God? Many great philosophers have debated this for centuries, including figures like Anselm, Descartes, and even modern-day philosophers like Alvin Plantinga. However, Kant had a major objection to it, and his reasoning might just change how you think about the idea of proof itself. Let's take a quick dive into the history of this argument. The ontological argument has existed for a long time, and it's attracted both supporters and critics. The crux of the argument? If you define God as a being that is perfect and necessary, then, by definition, God must exist. After all, if we're talking about something perfect, it wouldn't be perfect unless it exists, right? Now, some people think this sounds almost too simple. It's almost like using a fancy definition as a loophole for proving something's existence. So, what's Kant's take on this? Kant's problem with the ontological argument isn't about whether God exists or not, it's more about how we can know something exists. For Kant, the key issue lies in something he called epistemology, or the theory of knowledge. Kant argued that reason alone, just thinking about something, can't confirm its existence, especially if that thing is beyond human experience, like God. In simpler terms, Kant said, just because we think of something as existing doesn't mean it actually exists. You can think up the idea of a perfect unicorn, but that doesn't make it real, right? Kant's refutation is often misunderstood. Philosophers in the 20th century, like Frege and Russell, focused on Kant's idea that existence is not a predicate. This means that existence isn't a quality that can be added to the concept of a thing, like saying something is red or tall. So, when the ontological argument tries to argue that God exists because he is a necessary being, it's like saying God must exist because we defined him that way. But for Kant, this is a logical mistake. But not everyone agrees with this interpretation of Kant. Contemporary defenders of the ontological argument, like Alvin Plantinga, think Kant misunderstood the argument's logic. Plantinga and others argue that Kant's refutation doesn't actually debunk the ontological proof. In fact, some believe that the argument is still valid, and they've revived it in modern philosophy. But let's circle back to Kant's deeper concern. It wasn't just about whether existence was a predicate, it was about the very nature of knowledge. For Kant, knowledge can only come from experience. You can't just reason your way to knowledge about something you can't experience, like God. To break it down further, Kant's main issue was that the ontological proof tries to use pure reason to prove something about existence. But for Kant, any claim about existence has to be grounded in experience. If you can't experience something, how can you claim to know it exists? This is why, for Kant, the ontological proof just doesn't work. So what does this mean for us today? Well, it raises some interesting questions about how we know what we know, and whether reason alone can ever tell us the truth about the world, especially when it comes to the big questions, like the existence of God. Kant's objections may not completely shut the door on the ontological proof, but they challenge us to think deeper about what existence really means, and whether we can ever know something just from the concepts we define. So, the next time you encounter the ontological argument or any philosophical proof, remember that Kant's challenge is still very much alive. After all, can we really prove something exists simply by thinking about it? That's all for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with Kant? Or do you think the ontological proof still holds water? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into philosophy, metaphysics, and beyond.